I am Jack Ravi. I am a collage, mixed media, found objects, assemblage, whatever you want to call it, artist. It depends every day, but that's kind of me. I love working with things that I find. The most exciting thing for me is to gather things. Sometimes gather more than I can possibly use, but I know eventually they will be used, or they will just work as inspiration around me. So yeah, collecting is a big part of the work for me. Taking things that have already a bit of story, it's a really great starting point for me. So vintage photos, yes, always. Old pieces of paper, ephemera, documents, old books, anything that I can find really. If it's 100 years old, I'll probably be really interested. If it looks like it's 100 years old, just as much. So yeah, that's kind of my love affair with found objects. Books are a big part of what I do. There's something that I find really quite therapeutic about sitting down with them. You know, they look like they've been run over by a car, which is kind of what I like, but it actually takes a really long time and a lot of intention to make something that looks like it's been run over by a car. You know, I have processes and I have techniques that I use, but for the most part really it's just about slowly accumulating and adding, and there's a lot of small things that are added, and it's a sedimentation process kind of. So I quite like to just sit at the desk and you know, even add a little thing every day, just a small stitch, and just gluing bits of things that I find around me, and they're like art journals, and so they kind of I respond to the materials, and they're very, very spontaneous. So it's hard to replicate one, and sometimes I wish I had a perfect formula for one, but it's very much depending on what I have around me, and it's a thing that I love to make, and more discovering how I can bind things using unconventional materials like a glove or some cabinet doors, and things that maybe would be unusual for a book, but if you can bind your pages together, I find that very satisfying, and then kind of take my time with them. I mean, some of these books I think are never finished, and then sometimes you just let them go and consider them done, but I could keep adding forever and ever. If they're around me, I'll just keep putting bits in them, and they keep evolving. So yeah, love books, love making books, love teaching making books as well, because you know, you offer one prompt and 10 people will make 10 different things, which is so fascinating. Something like this, it's quite the collective work, because there'll be stuff, yeah, Santa Cruz, that's when I was out there. So participants can share some of their things, and so the book that everyone makes and that I made is quite the combination of everyone's, you know, stories and materials, and yeah, it's quite a group effort. I think creativity was always there, even when I was a child. But something happened in 2020. I think everything changed in 2020, but I sat at the kitchen table and started making a collage, and that became a thing that I did every single day of lockdown. Revealed a lot about me and what I wanted to do, what I needed to do in a difficult time. So I think that was quite the moment where I understood how essential making was to me, something that maybe I hadn't done in a while, or I hadn't given the space that it needed. And so yeah, 2020 really brought that to my awareness, because in a point of crisis I felt drawn to the table and I made a collage, and that was the beginning. One collage on day one of lockdown, and then another one the next day, and I made like 100 collages over the space of the lockdown, and they were all different. They were all kind of inspired by what I was feeling, how I was, and what I had. And at that point I didn't have many supplies, so it was really using what I had. I think it planted the seed of my desire to make, and so then I started sourcing papers for collage. When you look for vintage papers, you quite quickly find vintage photos as well, so that's when I kind of started to also collect photos, which became my main really art supply. And I always say if I had to choose between going to an art store and an antique shop, absolutely antique. Take me to a flea market and I'll spend all my money. I'm not so interested in beautiful, blank canvases. I love buying an antique painting and painting over it. It's taking things and using them in different ways that I find really exciting. The art store takes a bit of that fun away, using things as they are supposed to be used. Creativity is just something that I've kind of discovered as I start to meet people that do this kind of work, is like, and it's quite sad how many people really were not encouraged to make and create, or they were told that they weren't good enough artists and they couldn't draw, and that just gets in the way. And then I'm meeting people in their 50s and 60s who are now starting to re-explore this territory that for ages they didn't even dare to venture into because of something that they were told when they were very little. And it's really sad. I myself thought for a long time that because I couldn't realistically draw, that I couldn't do fine art and I couldn't go to art school. And I'm kind of unpacking that now, and also really understanding the many ways of drawing, even just simply drawing, that there are. And we think drawing means something that looks exactly like what we're looking at. It's realism, and it's just such a small part of it. So I feel like my mission is also now to kind of get the people that have been told that they weren't good enough and just give them an opportunity and celebrate them, because I think it's an important thing. And after not making for a really long time, I am now at a point where it's not an option anymore. It's not even a choice anymore. It's a responsibility almost that I have towards myself to just keep showing up. And this is the only. I can't imagine a different life now than the creative life that I have been building. So I find that for myself, and more for the people around me, that in this crazy times of we spend hours scrolling on our phones, and it's like, actually, if you can spend 10 minutes just putting some paint on a piece of paper, the stuff that happens when you do that kind of work is just so life-changing and healing. And I believe in that, and I don't see any other way for me now moving forward than to be creative. That's really all that I wanted to say. So I was born in the north of Italy, in a really small town on Lake Maggiore. I lived and went to school in Italy, went to university in Milan, studied history of art. When I graduated, I moved to London. I moved to the city. I was looking to kind of figure out who I was and begin in a new environment and speaking a foreign language, and London was buzzing and exciting. And I moved to the city that became my home for 10 years, which was great for the time. I think in my 20s, it was the place to be. It was perfect for me. At the same time, I didn't really get a lot of space to make, because I think it's such an expensive city that you sometimes need to really put all your effort into making a living, and so that became quite difficult. So I kind of put art making to the side, and so that's when lockdown brought it back to an essential part of my life. At the same time, I moved to Scotland. I had met my now husband in London, and we moved to Scotland, rural Scotland, in 2021, which is where we've been living for the past 4 years. It's just been the perfect change for me, being surrounded by nature, slower pace. Even though we're isolated, we're much more connected now. We have a buzzing community, lovely people, neighbours, things that in London you don't even often do. So it's a good life, and I moved on from the kitchen table to a slightly bigger studio, which is my favorite place in the house. I can work from home. I can make in here. I can film my classes. Everything happens in the little space of my studio, which is, yeah, it's a big joy and a great achievement to be able to do this now. Finally stepping into kind of having a clearer mission and purpose. So yeah, it's been a great change, and we'll see what happens next, but we're here now. A few of these pieces come from a series called Remnants, which is actually up there. What was interesting about this work was that it started from a process, which was the bundling of papers and fabrics that I do to make books. I was really fascinated by how beautiful and sculptural these bundles looked, and so that gave me the idea to start making work that looked like those little bundles. And so there's a few examples of that, and I started playing with the size and the shapes and kind of having a bigger one kind of isolated, 3 cohesive ones, 9 little ones, or a big kind of sculptural object. Fascinated by the tight wrapping and the strings that keep the papers together, and then really kind of curating, I suppose, the front of the bundle in a way that would help me tell a few little stories and a few little images. So this is my series Boys Were Pink, which I made in 2021. It's now made of 9 vintage portraits. These were vintage photos, quite large size, or cabinet cards, that I basically added color and story with rhinestones. So the idea behind these photos was to kind of respond to these faces in a way where I was drawn to some kind of glint in the eye or something that felt quite soft or feminine, and then I decided to incorporate all this new kind of flamboyant and colorful outfits by stoning one crystal at a time. I then built some kind of relationship with each person, or what I in my head knew about them, and then decided to name every single one. So obviously when you work with vintage photos you often don't know names, but I decided to name them kind of responding to their faces. So I've got Miguel, Edward, Benjamin, Henrik, Charlie, and so on, and they are now part of my family. They belong in my studio. They're displayed with a rose as a kind of honoring gift, and in the last exhibition that I had at the Burnham Arts, we displayed them with the rose as well, and they were kind of the core of the exhibition to honor the queer stories and the ancestors that basically lived secret lives and they couldn't really express themselves fully. So I kind of do that for them as an artist to reclaim those stories that were not told. There were definitely quite a number of points and moments in the beginning of this journey where I received the love and the validation, and that came in different forms. Some were messages, some were people buying my work on Etsy. I had an Etsy shop at the time. Some people were asking how I made something and they wanted to learn. So I think there were a number of moments that made me realize that what I was doing not only was serving me because it was a way to cope and be creative and just understand what I was meant to do, but it was also serving others. And so I think there wasn't a specific one moment, but I remember being quite good at celebrating all the little moments, the first sale and the first thing that somebody asked me to collaborate with, and the first class that I taught. And you know, I tried really hard to celebrate even the little things, because they're big. At the time they're big, and I can look back and say that they were essential to building this life. So maybe not a specific one moment that changed everything, but a lot of little moments, or even more than moments, just humans, people that have been there. One of the first people that ever bought work from me ended up teaching a retreat with me. So I've built bonds and relationships that sometimes were born on Instagram and they became real life partnerships. I published a book with somebody that I'd met on Instagram, and now we're close friends and we speak every week and we live in different places. So I think, yeah, relationships and humans had really made that change for me and make me understand that I could live this life and I wasn't alone. I was going to have a community around me, which was a big deal. This piece is called 528 Hertz, which is called the frequency of love, and it's supposed to be a kind of healing frequency that realigns the DNA into comfort and love, and I think that was the idea behind this composition, this combining of two different elements, this beautiful photos, antique photos of two young men, and then this kind of barbed wire or rusty wire that I'd found on the street, and then I inserted this flower which I found in a book. It was a book from 1900 that had this flower pressed inside, so the flower itself is potentially 100 years old too. It's just all combined into the back of a frame so that I can use things in my own way, and this box with two compartments that kind of splits them and tells that story of oppression, and then by celebrating and putting into the light of hopefully healing. And that was also a part of the exhibition, Reclaiming Shadows at the Burnham Arts. These are little thimble displays. Thimble are collected, and you often find this wooden cases, and I found a couple at a local charity shop without the thimbles, and so I bought them and decided to fill them with my own little treasures. I went with a variety of ages, a variety of angles. Some are close-ups, some are just a detail, some are a couple of people, some is a hand or a couple of feet, and just kind of building somewhat of a storyline between them, and then adding little things that I love, like a tiny little scroll, a little dried flower within a rusted piece of metal, dried roses, letters, just kind of little bits to kind of collect within the boxes. This piece is called Madonna del Lago, which means Virgin of the Lake, and I made that when I visited my hometown in Italy. I remember as a child hearing a lot of stories of how temperamental the water is and how many people had drowned in the currents of the lake, and so I think there was that imagery that was going around my head, and I have been thinking about working on that theme of the lake since I was born on a lake and now I live on a loch. So that was called Madonna, and it was supposed to be some kind of protective figure that honors the people that had been lost in the water. So there's a whistle here that belonged to my grandfather. It kind of ties in that imagery of, you know, being lost in the water and having something to call for help. The Virgin is sitting inside a shell. I just really love religious kind of iconography and imagery. Not necessarily something that I'm particularly interested in from a kind of religious point of view, but I do like the imagery. I find it somewhat comforting now. So this is some kind of new work that I've recently finished. It's untitled for the moment, and I think it's also still potentially in progress. It's definitely something that I've been drawn to, is this kind of religious imagery. So I found this Jesus at a flea market in Italy, and there was no cross. It had been kind of peeled off the cross, and so I bought it. In fact, I asked if I could have it because it didn't really have any cross behind it. They gave it to me for a small price, and then I was drawn to a brush, and I had this brush for a number of years, and this is actually made in Britain, it says. So I was just really kind of spontaneously playing with them and realized how perfectly suitable they were for each other. And so I think this is some of the kind of work that I do, is very much responding to materials that I have, and so they seem to be made for each other in a way. They began that conversation for now, and we'll see where that takes it. It's quite striking in a way, but we'll see how far I can take this new idea of religious stuff. And I've started collecting more pieces from other religions as well, like little Buddhas and Ganesh masks and things like that I'm going to respond to and see where that takes me. I think the teaching came because somebody asked me to, and multiple people started reaching out asking how I made certain things, and so I had learned everything that I knew just by learning from other teachers. And so I had started building my own work, and some people asked about my work. And so something that I would have never thought that I could do was to share what I know, but there was a demand for it. And so I just kind of follow that curiosity, and it was great. It was fun. It was beautiful to be able to connect to other people that understand and appreciate the same things. It just came because of that, and it became, I would say, this probably the main part of what I do now that is generating income is the teaching now. So selling work is a part of it, but really getting in the room with people, teaching online classes, that's really where the fun happens, where I get to connect. I get to share what I know, which is really humbling, and it's fun. Yeah, teaching is something that I would have never thought, and I am very camera shy, and here I am speaking to a camera. So the first class that I ever recorded was a big threshold for me to kind of explore and navigate when I was quite shy. I'm still an introverted, but I can find the connection with people just really exciting and rewarding. So I'm exploring this new territory of being in front and around other creative people, and it's the best part so far. So this is a book in progress because I love unconventional covers. I found this too, maybe like to push doors open. Found them at an antique shop in Edinburgh, and I thought they would make book covers. So I kind of made pages that would fit that size. So I built a little book that will sit in there, and I'm just kind of slowly building my pages now. You say when, because I'm having a blast now. This is. As soon as we moved in, I found this non-room. You know, when you just kind of offload a van, you just put things in empty rooms, and a couple of drawers unit were put in this room, and quite quickly I realized that this could be a space that I could use because it didn't serve any other purpose. I think the previous owners would keep their 7 dogs in this room, and now I use it for my own work. So I slowly started to kind of add my furniture, and then the collection grew and grew, and the more space you have, the more you expand. So it's a kind of maximalist space, quite small, but I've figured out how to store things in a way that can be also quite beautiful. Like the suitcases can store quite a lot of stuff. I have a really small table, and I've learned quite quickly, even teaching when I have big tables, that what I need is really like kind of be able to like open my arms and reach what's around me. So long tables just collect stuff, but I can't really sit on them. So a small table serves me really well. And then I have a little trolley where I can grab a few things. The rest is work that's stored as materials that I might use. It's stuff that I like, that I want to surround myself with because it just kind of inspires me. It's beautiful, it's antique. The craftsmanship that you can find in old boxes, it's just not available anymore in like new modern plastic things. So I just like to have my stuff around me. It's really growing and slowly building, and I'm filling every inch of these walls gradually, and it's becoming more and more like home for me. And I come in here every day, 7 days a week. Sometimes it's to sit and just do some stitching. Sometimes it's to full on film a class. Sometimes it's cut out words from books. Whatever it is that I'm doing, anything is surface space. The floor, I've got carpets that I use to like work on. Every inch is used by me for whatever it is that I'm doing or drying things. It's compact, but it's home. It's my home.